Good morning. So Ruth alluded to it a little bit in her prayer, but today's scripture is not an easy one, definitely not a fun one. I would say it's one of my least favorite ones. Ironic that I was chosen to speak for it, but we'll leave that to God. So our scripture today, just if you guys wanted to read it yourself, is from 2 Samuel 11, 1 through 15, and we will get to that. So we have been studying David's life. I'll admit he's one of my favorite characters of the Bible, so I've enjoyed it thus far. Maybe it's from being the youngest and understanding the whole, you stay outside with the sheep while they pick a prince because it's not going to be you. And that feeling of being passed over, looked over. And then he was chosen. And then he kept going. He killed Goliath. He became a musician in the court. How awesome was that? Till he got pursued by the king who tried to kill him because he didn't want him to be king. That was definitely not fun. And then he was crowned king. And in battle, they took over all of Israel and they took Jerusalem. And he had a lot to be proud of. Maybe too much, as we'll talk about today. Sometimes we can forget that our accomplishments are not ours, but they are God's. So our theme for today is when we lose our way, and I'd like to add to that a little bit. My focus will be finding God in the darkness, because when we lose our way, we are in the dark, even when it is bright as day. And David certainly has lost his way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the scripture, and then we're going to talk about it, and then we're going to focus on finding God in the darkness this morning. So when that time of year came around again, the anniversary of the Ammonite aggression, David dispatched Joab and his fighting men of Israel in full score to destroy the Ammonites for good. They laid siege to Rabbah, but David stayed in Jerusalem. One late afternoon, David got up from taking his nap and was strolling on the roof of the palace. This is from the Message. If you're reading and yours is a little different, sorry. From his vantage point on the roof, he saw a woman bathing. The woman was stunningly beautiful. David sent to ask about her and was told isn't that Bathsheba, daughter of Eliam and the wife of Uriah the Hittite? David sent his agents to get her. After she arrived, he went to bed with her. This occurrence during the time of purification following her period. Then returned home. Before long, she realized she was pregnant. Later, she sent word to David, saying, "I am pregnant." David then got in touch with Joab. "Send Uriah the Hittite to me." Joab sent him. When he arrived, David asked him for news of the front, how things were going with Joab and the troops, and with the fighting. Then he said to Uriah, "Go home, have a refreshing bath and a good night's rest." After Uriah left the palace, an informant of the king was sent after him, but Uriah didn't go home. He slept that night at the king's entrance, along with the king's servants. David was told that Uriah had not gone home. He asked Uriah, "Didn't you just come off a hard trip? Why won't you go home?" Uriah replied to David, "The chest is out there with the fighting men of Israel and Judah in tents. My master Joab and his servants are roaming in and out of the fields. So how can I go home and eat, drink, and enjoy my wife? On your life, I'll not do it." "All right," said David, "have it your way. Stay for the day, and I'll send you back tomorrow." So Uriah stayed in Jerusalem the rest of the day. The next day, David invited him to eat and drink with him, and David got him drunk. But in the evening, Uriah again went out and slept with his master's servants. He didn't go home. In the morning, David wrote a letter to Joab and sent it with Uriah. In the letter he wrote, "Put Uriah in the front lines, where the fighting is the fiercest, then pull back and have him exposed so that he is sure to be killed." So let's go over it to make sure we are clear on what happened. So David had his men out fighting. In a version of this, it said that it's normal for the kings to go with them, but he did not. So David stayed in Jerusalem. He was somewhere he should not have been. He should have been with his men supporting them. But I think that may be the smallest of his mistakes. And he's walking on the roof. Now, in my research, there's a little bit of a debate as to what was happening here. There are some say that Bathsheba was trying to seduce him. There are some saying that she was bathing on the roof. And there are others that say that he was looking in places he ought not to have been looking. Regardless of how he got there, he saw a beautiful woman and asked about her. This in itself is not so scandalous at the time. Yes, he was married. Yes, he had several wives, but it wouldn't be unusual for him to get another wife. Sadly, that was not his intention, though. He found out that she was married, and what he should have done based on the commandments was to leave her alone. And he did not. The part about this that is hard for me is that he was a great man of power and a great man of God. So in all likelihood, she had no choice. And then on top of which, she is pregnant, which if you read in the passage, probably shouldn't have happened, considering the reason why she was taking her bath. And so David, not willing to own up to what he has done, what he should not have done, has decided to take this further down the wrong path. And he is trying to send her husband home so that he can be with her, and they can all pretend that it never happened because the baby will be the father's. But Uriah does not play ball because he knows that his place is with the other warriors of David. He is supposed to be serving. While they are sleeping on the ground, he would never go home and relax by the fire and have dinner and spend time with his wife. That's ridiculous. And as an upright, righteous man, he actually talks back to the king. And he doesn't do what the king wants him to do. And so David tries again to persuade him with drink, the thing that can make a lot of people do stupid things, and it still does not work. Uriah, righteous man that he is, will not abandon his beliefs or his position. And for that, he's given his death sentence in a note to take to the person who will carry it out. I kind of wish we could keep going and we could talk about what happens next, but that is for next week. So instead, we are stuck in the darkness. We are stuck with the lost. A hard place to be. I certainly don't enjoy it. We want the happily ever after. Not today, though, but I do have some hope. We are going to find God in this because he's there. So it is my belief and my study from Scripture that God is in everything that he has created. So that means that I have a piece of God in me. You have a piece of God in you. These plants are fake, but if they were real, they would have a piece of God in them. Don't get me started on fake plants. I can't preach on that today. If we went outside and we were in the grass, we would feel God in that. If we looked up at the sky, we would feel God in that. So every moment of every day, of our lives, God is in us and God is around us. So during every moment of that story, God was there. And I think sometimes we struggle with that. Why didn't he stop it? David was a man of God. Why didn't he just grab him by his heels? But he didn't. He didn't because he allows us to make our choices. He wants us to follow him out of obedience and love, and not out of necessity or fear of punishment. He wants us to listen for him, to call to him, as I imagine perhaps Bathsheba was. But he was with her as well. He was in her and surrounding her every moment of her life. And that is the comfort that I want us to take from this moment. That no matter the darkness, because I'm sorry, but this is pretty dark. No matter the darkness in our lives or other people's lives, God is there the entire time, waiting for us to turn to him, begging us to turn to him, begging us to listen and obey. He's not passively standing there saying, oh man, I wish I could do something. He is urgently calling each of us to please listen. Please do whatever it is that he is calling us to do, or not do whatever it is he is calling us not to do. And the other piece that I want us to take away from this is the struggle that we have with the darkness. We don't want to talk about it. We don't want to look at it. We don't want to think about it. We especially don't want to hear about it Sunday morning from the pulpit. Why? Why are we so scared of those places where God still is? Why are we pushing it down and turning our heads away from those moments just because they're painful? And I'm using just a little casually here. I hear people on a regular basis say, I don't watch the news anymore. I don't read newspapers anymore. I can't handle any of that. I have enough going on. I don't need to read about that stuff. But if we're turning a blind eye and a deaf ear to the need of others, what are we doing? How can we call ourselves disciples of Christ when he put himself in between a mob and an adulterer and saved her life? When he let a woman wash his feet with her hair? When he had a tax collector, despised and hated, definitely a man of ill repute, over for supper? How many of us can say that we've done that? That we've taken that chance? And not just once. Jesus did it on a regular basis. And the reason he did it is because he recognized that those people were his. That they were as much a part of him as we are. And I hate saying us and them, because I feel like it implies that we are blameless, and I know that we are not. I know that I am not. Not by any stretch of the imagination. And sometimes within ourselves, we are worried that if we come too close to the darkness, too close to the sins of others, to the lost, that we will ourselves lose our way. And there is some scripture to support that in the New Testament when they talk about eating food. And there was the debate going on which food you should eat, which food you shouldn't eat. And the answer was very simple. Do what you can handle. If you feel that working around women who have been abused would be too much for you, then don't do it. But to not even try or ask God where he's calling you to, I think I find that more shocking. One of my life goals is to seek God and find God in all the places that he is, which seems like a lot since I said earlier that he is in everything. But I start with small things. So, for example, and none of this applies to today, Amanda, if I'm sitting in a service and I hear a song and I'm like, what in the world? Why are we singing that? And then I look around and I see someone in rapture praising God, then I know that I've missed the boat, not the person who put the song in the service. I'm the one that needs to look past myself because God is in that song. And I just don't see it. Same when I hear a sermon preached. And afterwards, I may be like, I didn't get anything. And the person I'm talking to is like, really? I felt God so strong. And I'm like, okay, just me then. That was just me. This journey started when I was really young. I was in college, seeing God in all things. And I had a friend, an old roommate, who, I want to say she was strange, but I think we're all strange in our own way. And she took me for a walk. And we get outside on the green, and she's like, I want you to take your shoes off. So I took my shoes off. And she just looked at me and said, do you feel God? And I was like right now? No, I feel weird. And she was like, well, God is in the grass. And I'm like, okay, well, then I'm stepping on God. We should stop, trying to make jokes, trying to get out of it. And she's like, no, I'm serious. I want you to do this every day till you feel God. And I'm like, well, who are you to tell me to go look for God in the grass? And she's like, I'm a friend who wants to help you. I was like, okay. So I did every day. At some point when nobody was looking, I would find a spot, take my shoes off, and stand there waiting while nothing happened. And I'm like, gosh, this is so stupid. I should not be doing this. But I was curious. And so then one day, I felt it. And it was like peace and warmth and love just flowed up. And I was like, wow, I've been missing this my whole life. At that time, I'd been a Christian for 10 years growing up in the church, and I had never felt that. I was like, all I have to do is stand in the grass with my shoes off, and you'll reveal yourself to me. And today, I think that is all I'm feeling God asking us to do. Not that you all need to go outside and take your shoes off, but in your life, your day-to-day life, in those moments, whether they are in darkness or in light, that you do not feel God. For me, I'm going to be honest, it's normally in people. I can have a conversation with someone and they rub me the wrong way. And God reminds me that person is my child and I am in them. So think about those moments in your life where you do not feel God. Maybe because of an emotion, maybe because of a situation, maybe because of a person, maybe because of busyness. I don't know. But ask God to show you the moments where you do not see him or you are not following him. Ask him to reveal those to you and ask him how to find him in those moments. Because I think that's all he wants, is to be sought and found, because he is there. No matter how far off our path we are, or the people that we love are, or the people on the news are, God is still there. He hasn't gone anywhere. And he is begging with everything inside of him to turn and look and acknowledge him and worship him. And to remember that as we struggle to give him our all, he gave us his all when he sent his son, his pure and holy, perfect son, to die for us, whether we choose him or not.